Well, welcome, Congressman Rodney Davis. We're just going to chit chat for a little bit while people join in. The audience is going to join us and join the live conversation. So how's it going? How's shelter in place going for the Davis family?
It's been interesting, Esther. I can tell you that. I've spent a lot of time here getting used to video conferencing apps. I've had to create a folder on my phone for all the different apps and folks in the media or folks that will use this, in Congress. I've been on a lot of bipartisan calls talking about how we can work together to make sure that, we figure out how to address this epidemic and the coronavirus issue, but at the same time that we don't forget, what does it take to move ahead? When we need the Monday morning quarterback is after this. And, a lot of discussion talking about what we can do to make sure that we don't put ourselves as a country at any level of government in a situation not to respond as well as we'd hope to a pandemic.
Yeah. And we're going to get into that. I'm excited to hear kind of what your perspective is on like the Paycheck Protection Program and all those kinds of things that are really in our awareness right now. But as the audience joins us, I do want to ask if anyone has questions for Congressman Davis or for me. You can comment below and we will get to some questions during this time. So everyone watching, feel free to answer questions or ask questions, and we'll work on answering them for everyone. So Rodney, the Paycheck Protection Program, it ran out today.
Did.
What's happening?
Well, we knew it wasn't going to be enough. We were hoping that not as many people would want to apply as we'd hoped, but unfortunately, we were right. We knew it was going to be the first pot of money to dwindle down, and because so many Main Street businesses, Esther, they need help. I mean, these are the people that have never asked government for help. They've invested their life savings as entrepreneurs, opened up their mom and pop shop on a local town square, and all of a sudden, government told them to shut down. This is not a disaster of their doing. This is a disaster that none of us asked for. I mean, think about it. Just a few short weeks ago, we were in an economy that everyone who's ever run for Congress promised the American people we would be at, an unemployment level that we promised everyone we would be at. Working with President Trump, we made that happen. But then this virus came, the pandemic that we weren't prepared for. No level of government was prepared. And now we see the need to get money to sustain our mom and pop shops so that they're around when the economy recovers. And really, that's what the PPP loan process was about. Mm-hmm. It was about giving them a chance to have the resources to sustain their business, pay their rent, pay their mortgage, pay their insurance, and pay their bills. And at the same time, keep employees employed, because our unemployment level doesn't need to go up as much as it drastically has already. That was the goal. And businesses from throughout my district, the 17th district, have taken to this program. Here's the problem. We want to plus that program up, because out of phase 3, the CARES Act, the phase 3 of our coronavirus fight, it's the only pot of money that's gone down to zero. The rest of them still have cash. Wow. The Democrats are stopping us from upping the PPP. And if you're a company, and I'm sure you've got people calling you, Esther, that they've applied.
I had a conversation today. This business that I talked to today, they actually got their PPP money today, and they called me and were like, "Okay, just walk us through exactly what we're allowed to." They want to follow the rules to make sure that the loan can be forgiven. So I talked them through what they can and can't spend the money on.
And that's great, and that's what you need to do. But I've gotten calls today from people who were in the pipeline, the application process, and all of a sudden the money runs out.
Yeah,
and it's because of Dick Durbin and Democrats like Speaker Pelosi and Chuck Schumer that have decided they want to play politics. They want to add money to accounts that have yet to be distributed to states and localities and other parts of our country that we already passed in a $2.2 trillion bill called the CARES Act. They want to plus those up even more instead of getting the money to where we know it's needed most. Remember, we passed a law creating the PPP on a Friday. A week later, the Trump administration, Secretary Mnuchin, and the Small Business Administration, they implemented the program working through our local banks. It wasn't without hiccups. It's not without hiccups. But the problem now is people have gotten applications in. They don't have money. We could fix this in a matter of minutes if Senator Durbin wouldn't object in the Senate to plussing this up by unanimous consent and sending it over to the House where we could plus it up by unanimous consent too. And you could have people like the engineering firm in Champaign I had call me today. They could rest assured knowing they could keep their business open instead of watching Democrats play politics in Washington.
Yeah. Do you have any idea, Congressman Davis, about the timeline? Is it just it's on hold until the political games get solved, or what is your insights on when is it going to be replenished?
That's a great question, Esther. And that's why we need you in Congress, because we know that you're going to help us fight to take the political games out of Washington, D.C. And it's the gamesmanship that your opponent thrives in, and it's the gamesmanship that people in Washington seem to relish in. You know, we could have this done in a matter of minutes.
Yeah.
I'm not talking days, minutes. But instead, Democrats want to fight for things like funding $25 million to the Kennedy Center in an emergency bill. Hey, I'm a big supporter of the Kennedy Center, but an emergency coronavirus bill for $25 million, and then they lay their staff off. I mean, that project right there that Speaker Pelosi and the Democrats in the House forced to be in that bill, that's going to go down as their bridge to nowhere.
Right. So what really got to me about all the political games and stuff is the progression of headlines that we saw around the block that just happened with the 250 billion that was going to be replenished to the PPP program. And at first was like, Democrats play political games and block it. And then it got edited, and then it said bipartisan back and forth stops the replenishing of the PPP. And like, you're like, come on, we all know the games are being played. Like, just stop. Like, don't lie to us. We all know that this is Nancy Pelosi holding everything up, and it's got to change.
It does have to change. And really, the only way to change that is to take the speaker's gavel away from her. We've got a job to do in Washington, and that's to continue to work together to get things done for our country, especially during this emergency. But in the end, Esther, we got to have a Republican majority. And that Republican majority is going to hinge upon winning races like yours, districts that President Trump was able to be victorious in, and at the same time, having candidates who are well-versed and well-trained to be able to hit the ground running. And I can't think of a better person in the 17th district to be able to hit the ground running, be able to immediately make an impact in Congress than you. And I appreciate you taking the time, stepping up and taking on this challenge. It's not an easy challenge. I've been there. And the times that you've been in Washington meeting with our colleagues, they've been very impressed by your past, very impressed by your campaign, and also very impressed by what your goals are once you get to Washington.
Thank you. Thank you. That means a lot to hear you say that, Rodney. I want to ask a question about, because we share conservative values, and we believe in that government is not the answer, and that small government is better for our freedom. But we're in this time that the government did have to step in and address the pandemic. So what do you see as, like, going forward? Is this government overreach happening? How do we return back to smaller government action and kind of letting localities and states kind of take the reins again? What do you think on that issue?
Well, it's a great question, Esther. As a matter of fact, it's very timely. Today, I was named to a bipartisan task force that the president has put together to work with him and his administration. Yeah.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you. We're going to work with him and his administration on finding out areas of common ground where we can keep people safe. But at the same time, we got to come to the realistic conclusion that there are a lot of parts of America that have not been hotspots. They have not been impacted. And the social distancing measures and the hygiene measures that everyone in this country is taking control of, they're working. So we gotta let the economy work again too. So I was on a call today for about an hour with the president, the vice president, Secretary Mnuchin, and a bipartisan group of members of the House. And it was actually really refreshing, because some of my colleagues who are on the other side of the aisle, who don't play politics like your opponent does, 24 hours a day. They're the ones that willingly stepped up. They're the ones that have decided that they want to work with this administration. They want to be able to make sure that this administration has the bipartisan support to open our country back up where it can be open. Let's not kid ourselves. We're going to have hot spots, but if we can figure out a way to get the adequate testing materials, we can figure out a way to successfully implement social distancing in some of our other geographic less affected areas. Let's fix this and let's do it. And really the encouragement I had and the thank yous from these Democratic members to the president and vice president directly was something I haven't seen in Washington in a while, but really excited me because they got a good group of people, especially on the House side, that I know are really working hard with the president to make a difference. And they're going to work with me and the rest of the group to open things up where we can open things up.
That's awesome. That's great to hear. And what does recovery look like going forward? What are some of the things that you guys were talking about today or that you're looking forward towards?
Well, a lot of discussion was on what's happened already and the optimism in a very bipartisan way that people had on this call, that they could work with the president and work with us to really define what reopening looks like. Look, we don't know what that reopening is going to look like. That's what the task force is for. We want to hear from all parts of the country. Clearly, people that represent New York City have a much different perspective than somebody who, lives in Moline or represents Taylorville, Illinois. Taylorville, my hometown, has been hit with 2 clusters at 2 senior facilities. But our local officials, our healthcare professionals, they've done what they can to quarantine those facilities. And one of them's off quarantine already. And that's the way you address hotspot problems within our communities. It's success stories like that that I hope to bring to our communities or to this task force. One other issue too that I think is not addressed enough. It's our healthcare system as a whole. Look, we told clinics all over this country to shut down because we needed their PPE and we didn't want them doing elective procedures. Well, what one may consider an elective procedure, Esther, others may consider a life-saving measure, like a colonoscopy. That's the process that was used to diagnose my wife with colon cancer 20 years ago. And frankly, if we harken back to 20 years ago, and if she were to have to wait 6 weeks to get a colonoscopy and then a few more weeks to get surgery, now that could have been devastating and put her into a next stage of colon cancer. So we've got to start to have our governor and the state officials begin to open up very safe medical procedures, because we've been able to keep people safe in our hospitals that are treating COVID patients. We ought to be able to have procedures in place so that we don't have a healthcare problem and a morbidity problem because of diseases that we always have been able to fight, but people don't have access to the diagnostic tools or the surgeries to help in that manner to defeat those diseases. That's something we seriously have to think about on day one of what opening up our economy looks like.
Well, I'm glad you're a voice in the conversation, Rodney, because our part of Illinois is so different. And I know there's a lot of parts of the Midwestern part of our country that is just completely different from an urban area like New York City. And so we want to have a representation at the table to make sure that, like, downstate, Western part of Illinois, just people that live like we live and have lifestyles like we have, that isn't urban centralized. We're farmers, we're small towns, those kinds of things. Like, we just have a totally different lifestyle and totally different concerns than someone who would be in Chicago or in New York City or some of the bigger urban areas. So, like, I hope that we get reopening that's focused on what works for us in our communities.
And that's our plan. And I think there's a good mix of rural and urban members of Congress, Republicans and Democrats, that'll be able to have that conversation.
Awesome. It's great to hear. It's great to hear. I'm going to see if we've got some questions. Trent says he's a small business owner and there's no money left in the PPP for him. He tried today. John Sample says, thank you, Congressman Davis, for the tour of the White House and the Capitol.
Well, great. I'm glad it worked out. But if I could, I would once again, in case Trent got on late, look, we're trying to plus up that PPP program. We know it's out of money. It's $350 billion, and banks and the SBA were doling out more money in a day than what the Small Business Administration did the previous year. So I got to thank the Trump administration, especially Secretary Mnuchin. Look, this guy was built for this time in this pandemic. He's listening to Republicans, Democrats, and getting answers to the questions that he's been given by us. He's addressed many issues that we've personally brought up. And you know what? He got the United States government to implement a $350 billion program in less than a week. It had its kinks. We know that, still does. But the guidance keeps coming and he keeps adapting. That's what government should do. That's the way government should operate. That's why we need more people like Steve Mnuchin. We need more Republicans in Congress that agree with Steve Mnuchin. And that's where you're coming.
Yeah, business-minded people. Like to me, in interacting with people that are pure politicians versus people that have backgrounds in business, they just come to the table with a completely different mindset. Like, actually, let's solve problems. Like, we're not here to be government bureaucrats. We're here to get things done. And that Steve definitely has that attitude for sure. Secretary.
Well, he does. Secretary Mnuchin's been great. The access this administration's given to Republicans and Democrats is amazing. I was on a call with FEMA's administrator today. I mean, look, there's nobody busier in the country right now than the administrator of FEMA. But he sat there for an hour and took calls from our transportation and infrastructure members and was able to respond for an hour with Republicans and Democrats. And it was the Democrat chair, my good friend Peter DeFazio, that set up that call. So they're responsive and not being partisan at all. And I certainly hope when you get to Congress, T&I committee is one you look at. It's a great committee for your district and one that I think needs some great representation on our side of the aisle.
Yeah, I'm excited to be on transportation. I'm also really excited to be on agriculture. Those are two committees that I know you're on, that you sit on. So we'll be on those together.
Absolutely. Can't wait.
Well, thank you so much, Rodney, for making time and having this conversation and sharing your insights. And congrats again on being appointed to the task force. I'm really happy to have your voice as part of that leadership team.
Well, we appreciate it. We appreciate it.
So,
and you know what? We want to have more voices in Washington, D.C. that are able to join task forces like this and be a voice of reason. We don't need people playing politics 24 hours a day. We need people who are willing to sit down, look at things in a bipartisan way, and actually work together to get things done. That's what this task force is going to do. And that's the voice I know you're going to bring to Washington.
Well, thank you, Rodney. I'm looking forward to it. I think the 17th really, really deserves better representation, and that's what I'm working for.
Great, great. You got any more questions for folks coming in, or you got any other clarifications you need?
No, I appreciate it, but I do want to let everyone know that you can reach out to Congressman Davis. You can reach out to his office by going to his website, which is scrolling at the bottom of the screen. It's rodneydavis.house.gov. So if you have any questions for Congressman Davis, if you have questions for me, estherforcongress.com, please reach out. My campaign is doing everything that we can to help facilitate connecting people with resources to get us through this period together. So we're all in. I know Congressman Davis is all in, and anything we can do to help.
Well, we're all in for you, Esther. And, you keep working hard, keep traveling your district, talking about what it means to really represent the 17th district in Congress. We need to make sure that Kathy is our Speaker of the House. Then we'd have that PPP plussed up in a matter of minutes rather than waiting for Democrats to quit playing games. Right. And no more $25 million emergency funding projects for the Kennedy Center under Kevin McCarthy's leadership and under your term in Congress. So looking forward to serving with you, Esther.
Same. Thank you so much, Rodney. Well, thank you everyone for joining us and being part of this Facebook Live. Please reach out again and have a great weekend this weekend, and we'll talk again soon. So
absolutely.
Thank you, Rodney.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.